Hey Internet, welcome back to Sunday. Today we wanted to tackle the topic of deciding or committing to LTC, learning to code. Um, at least for me, it was a big moment where I decided to actually dive into sort of a lifestyle or an approach, even just a mindset, which was embracing the fact that I was going to learn to code. Sort of before, let's see, October, November, somewhere around there, October, November 2018 is the time that I decided to fully go in to learning to code. Before that, I had spent several years thinking about whether or not it would be possible, dreaming about quitting my job, doing a coding boot camp, potentially going back to school. I dreamed or daydreamed about becoming and discovering that I was really good at coding courses on places like Udemy or LinkedIn Learning. And I would just spend a lot of time thinking about learning to code or thinking about committing to learn to code. And when I thought about committing to learning to code, I became really stressed out. I felt like I wasn't ready to commit. I felt like what would happen if I decided to go head into learning to code and I was wrong. Like what would happen if it was a bad choice, if it was the worst choice, if it was a suboptimal choice? What would happen if I committed myself to learn to code? Whether it meant quitting my job or not is a separate story. But what if mentally I committed to learning to code? I sort of adopted that as part of my identity, and I was wrong. I found out that I was really bad at code or learning to code, learning to program, whatever you want to call it. And sort of that process, that sort of thought exercise of wondering if I might be bad at coding or turn out to be bad at programming or even just using logic to construct sort of schemas that you could codify as a program or a problem. That sort of negative friction really prevented me from actually considering actually giving a full chance to the idea of delving into the world of code, the idea of actually starting to LTC, learn to code. And it was only through sort of two major events that I decided to commit to it. One was sort of some friction with my former employer. There was an event which allowed me to leave my job. This event was mutual in a lot of ways, but there was essentially a restructuring of the firm. So I might have had the opportunity to stay, but I chose the opportunity to leave. So that was one big sort of shift in my professional status. That helped. The second thing was I was with this amazing person for 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. We were together for a while. She's deeply lovely and fabulous. But it turns out, when real life sort of checked in, we thought through it and decided we're probably not right for one another. So professionally, romantically, there's a sort of a shift in day-to-day workings of life, and I felt like it was now or never to learn to code. I sort of wish that I had started earlier or I had committed earlier, but it took me a good long while to actually commit to learning to code. What I find interesting about this is sort of all the fears, all the thoughts that I had before of maybe not being ready, not being good, not being right for programming, for learning to code, might actually turn out to be true. But just the fact that I have committed, that I have pursued this as a day-to-day thing on weekends, I think is really helpful. So just the commitment, action, the buy-in mentally to learning to code is a really positive thing. I'm not sure whether or not it's important to have an external event or external events like I had of a change in sort of employment or employer tension with the relationship and potentially separating with a loved one. But in my case, it was helpful. So I'm not sure if that more broadly applies, but I would just say that having now gone into it, it's perhaps easier said than done, but there was a lot of unnecessary friction, or maybe it was necessary to go through that process to arrive where I am now. That seems sort of more likely thinking about it, retroactively, but I would just say that like having made that switch of being afraid to commit to actually committing, like once you make that switch, it's a lot easier to sort of progress day to day. In summary, this video was about just the tension or the fear or the anxiety around LTC committing to Learn to Code, and sort of a little bit about my process. I had two separate events which sort of helped catalyze that. Obviously, people's own stories may they actually probably will be very different, yours included. But I would just say, like, from being on the other side, I'm not sure which side you are. Maybe you're still on the fence. But having made that mental shift, mental commitment to learning to code, it actually makes like day to day a lot easier, and sort of the results and the outcomes of like actually learning to code, whether or not I'll be good at it, whether or not I might get a job, whether or not I make a living coding, like those still remain to be answered. But just like having pursued it and bought in mentally is a major plus. So, as always, feel free to make comments, suggestions, all of that jazz. You know, there's a little like icon, a little thumbs up. I guess that's two thumbs up, thumbs down. Do what you want to do. For those of you who have subscribed to the community or to the channel, much appreciated. No pressure either way. And yeah, that's about it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you again.